welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. This is your host, MagMongoSlade. Today, we're going to talk about WWE Biography, Scott Hall. So, this one's pretty simple. It was good. It was great even. Now, I've got one issue, of course, is that they already released a documentary on Scott Hall that's probably up on WWE Network that has 80% of this biography in it already. So, actually more than 80%, probably 97% of this documentary already. So we're not going to spend a lot of time talking about it. It was phenomenal, but you have the opportunity to watch the biography on WWE Network already. So I want to talk about just two things. One, Scott Hall killing a man, which of course is a big part of Scott Hall's origin story. And the second is his apparent relapse that not many people discussed later in life. After DDP got him healthy, he apparently relapsed at the WWE Hall of Fame. So let's first talk about the situation at the Dollhouse. So I need to give credit to Oliver Lee Bateman, who is a wrestling historian, and he actually did the legwork on pulling up the newspaper articles from the Orlando Sentinel in 1982 and 1983. He works for The Ringer, at least that's where I found the article. And let me tell you, this is an insane story. Scott Hall is 24 years old. After spending some time as a bodybuilder, he becomes a bouncer at a strip club called the Dollhouse. That is somewhere in Florida. I think it's Orlando. In any event, Scott Hall starts seeing a young woman by the name of Carol. Carol is married to a man named Rodney Perry Turner. Rodney Perry Turner is 37 years old and is a manager at the Dollhouse. So Rodney Perry Turner hears that his wife is running around with Scott Hall. So on January the 15th, 1983, after making a series of threats towards Scott Hall, Rodney Perry Turner decides he's going to confront Scott Hall in the parking lot of the Dollhouse over his wife. I'm leaving the punchline for a little bit later. So at this point, they get into an argument. It's back and forth. The situation, like Scott Hall says, occurred. They're fighting over the gun. Rodney Perry Turner is shot in the head and killed almost immediately. Now, it's mentioned in the biography that due to a lack of evidence, Scott Hall is released. But what nobody ever told you, unless you actually go digging into who Rodney Perry Turner is that Rodney Perry Turner had killed a man 2 months prior over his wife. Let me tell you that story. So Rodney Perry Turner gets into a fight with a man by the name of William Bailey, who was 22 years old. William Bailey is a Naval Training Center trainee, and he was also making a pass at young Carol. At this point, they get into a fight. William Bailey and another man jumped on Rodney Perry Turner. Carol runs into their house. She grabs a rifle, and she comes back with it. Rodney Perry Turner fires a warning shot before shooting William Bailey to death. The man is killed November the 6th, 1982. At this point, the detectives investigate the case, finds that it was a justifiable homicide because William Bailey had jumped Rodney Perry Turner, and a grand jury on December the 14th, 1982, agreed. And so Rodney Perry Turner, 37 years old, killed a man who was 22 years old, tried to kill a 24-year-old Scott Hall over his 19-year-old wife. If you actually look up Rodney Perry Turner, there's actually, his grave is on the internet. Somebody, you put in find a grave site, you can find Rodney Perry Turner. Scott Hall fans have found that thing and posted Razor Ramon gifs underneath it. They're out of control. I'm pretty sure some of them have been deleted, but you can see that there's still some remaining. So for those of you who didn't know this, then now you know that Scott Hall suffered from PTSD after he shot Rodney Perry Turner in the head over Carol. And he said he was with Carol for 8 years. So he continued dating this girl even after he murdered her husband. Now, that part of the story I did know, but I did know that he continued dating her, but it sinks in so much more. It becomes so much deeper when you realize that not only was the woman also extremely young, but her husband had killed somebody else over her just a little over a month prior, and he had gotten away with it. So it stands to reason that this guy who had gotten away with one homicide figured I might as well double up. If I got to shoot William Bailey and kill him over making advances against my wife, and this guy running around with my wife, I'm just going to go ahead and kill him too. So it becomes 100% believable that Rodney Perry Turner was making threats towards Scott Hall. Had Scott Hall been a smaller, weaker man, he would probably be dead today, and none of us would have ever had Razor Ramon. A truly amazing story when you think about it, how deep that situation is, and how it so deeply affected Scott Hall. As a man who, maybe he knew about this thing, maybe he didn't, but it takes a lot to kill somebody, especially when you had no intentions of doing so. And so he spent years of suffering from PTSD and imposter syndrome. Now, how did I get imposter syndrome out of this? Well, one of the things that if you listen to Scott Hall in the biography, he talks about feeling bad about himself and having the feeling that he's a fraud, that he's not as good as everybody thinks he is, and that he's going to get exposed as being a fraud, and everybody's going to find out about him and find out he's not a great guy. That's called imposter syndrome. So Scott Hall, of course, his life is defined by untreated mental illness and, self-medicated mental illness when you're talking about alcohol and other kinds of drugs. And that's the story that we all know. So we get to the WWE documentary was released in 2015. And they end with the Hall of Fame. Everything's great. Scott's fantastic because he had not died yet. This biography, of course, comes out after Scott dies. So they feel more emboldened to tell the final tale of Scott Hall. And this is where we feel that Scott Hall fell off the wagon and was actually drinking the day he was put into the Hall of Fame. So apparently, they got the footage from him in NXT talking to guys like Jey Uso and Baron Corbin and all these guys. And he's been a mentor. He's doing what he loves to do. And things still aren't going well because he's still dabbling in the alcohol. And he admits to some friends that he cannot ever tell anybody that he will never have another drink. And he can't tell other people not to drink. And he has to make the admission that he loves drinking. And so he's going to keep doing it. And so he does. He starts drinking all over again. After DDP saved his life, this was a wonderful story. And everyone thinks it ends there, that Scott Hall was likely clean when he died. No, they tell the story that 2021 Hall of Fame, he was more drunk than they had ever seen him before in 2021 in the Hall of Fame. That's incredibly sad. We know that COVID did a lot to people. That COVID trapped a lot of older people in home, and they were separated from their families. They were separated from their friends, and you really don't see the invisible damage that did to people, because if the person hates themselves and they're trapped at home alone, no wife, no children, no nothing, and you've got a problem, whether it's drugs or alcohol, and you got to sit in an empty house with that demon, there's only so much time before it takes over, and it's a truly horrible tale. So, he ends up falling down and hurting his hip, and he laid on the floor for 3 days. You know, like imagine being helpless and having nobody around after you hurt yourself and you lay there for 3 days, likely soiling yourself and humiliated and in pain. And then for the first person to find you is to be your own child. And you've been laying there in your own mess for 3 days. That's horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. And I hate that we were told this. I hate that this was revealed to me. And I know that he had fallen down. I didn't know that he was laying on the floor for 3 days. And if you land on the floor for 3 days, you had no choice but to mess yourself. And I could have lived my whole life without that image in my head. You know, could have lived my whole life without it. So I do want to mention this because I didn't really think about it until now. But they tell the story of the Razor Ramon vignettes. And this is something that you didn't get out of the WWE documentary, is that Vince McMahon worked hands-on with Scott and the Razor Ramon vignettes. So you get footage, like literal footage of Vince McMahon walking him through the lines. You see Vince trying to do the Razor Ramon thing with the necklaces, and you see Vince with the toothpick tickling at the camera. It's the coolest shit in the entire documentary. I literally watched that part 10 times. I literally just kept rewinding it like, this is unreal that Vince McMahon was this involved in this character. And I always love when they got like old Vince footage. I love that stuff. Big thumbs up on that. That took this to the next level. That was that extra seasoning. That means that you need to watch this. This was very good. So, excellent biography. Really good job. And I think that the children did a great job too. The daughter was very emotional. Son was very emotional. We know that the son, bit of a dickhead. He stole from Scott when he was alive, but we know that's something we got to talk too much about. For those of you who are interested, however, in 2014, Scott Hall tweeted out that he's shocked that his son stole $1,000 from him. Cody owned up to it like a man, said that bills was due. He was on hard times. He put the bills on his dad's credit card without asking, apologized, and I guess that was that. But kind of scumbag behavior right there, even though it's not that big a deal. It's only $1,000. You know, I'd have been mad because $1,000 is a lot of money to me. But if you're Razor Ramon, you probably got that in royalties, right? You probably got like 10 times that in royalties. At least I would hope so. So in any event, it was tremendous. Very good. Go watch it, and you should watch it more than once. Thank you guys for your time. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.